Hello everyone, this is Joe and welcome to episode 2 of Collecting Bionicle. This is my brand new series I just launched where I'm showcasing my journey of me collecting everything at Bionicle. Definitely check out episode 1 first. There I kind of introduce you to where my collection's at and just a general introduction to the series. But this episode will be focused on me sorting through old pieces from when I was younger and I was collecting Bionicle as a kid. And I sort through all the pieces by color and I create these really nice cardboard containers for them. Now, just like the first episode, I have a few notes on my phone and my memory isn't great, so I don't want to forget anything. And I just want to remind you guys that this is, a pretty laid-back series where I'm just going to grab the camera and film some sort of process or me accomplishing a task in my collection. But just like the first episode, I have an intro here, but this time it's just because this actual process of me organizing the pieces was captured a couple months ago, and I just thought this would be something great to showcase. Not only what an average episode will look like with me just trying to accomplish something in my collection, but also I do kind of learn an important lesson about collecting or just customizing in general. Granted, I've encountered this lesson in the past, but I kind of encountered it again, and I do think it's a very important lesson just to remind yourself when collecting. So I'll definitely speak more on that on the end. And so yeah, again, if things look different, episode was from a couple months ago. I keep saying that just in case. I feel like a lot of people are going to have questions about that. But yeah, so that's what this second episode is about. And without further ado, let's get on and see how I'm going to organize these pieces. Alright, so here are the bins that contain the mostly unassembled Bionicle figures from my childhood. And so the goal of this video is going to be sifting through these parts and organizing them. Now, to explain why I'm doing that, I have to start with, I guess, the original mission of this collection. And so, I guess, of course it included collecting all the sets, instructions box, and then combiners, and it starts really branching out from there. But since I want all that stuff, I always knew that I would have to, buy a lot of the sets again, since my collection that I had was rather incomplete with pieces missing. I had some instructions, and mostly none of the boxes. And also, I really, as a kid, it felt like I had a ton of sets. I'd dump it out, pieces covering the floor. I would have a blast building them, making MOCs, rebuilding old sets, playing having giant battles, all that stuff. But in reality, I was a kid, so I had maybe 2-3 sets from the wave, if I was lucky, maybe from the year. Some years were certainly lighter. So I knew I was going to have to go back and rebuy a lot of the sets. But I didn't want to completely disregard these pieces since it could be rather expensive, getting some of these parts, and it just complicates things, and there's no reason to waste them since I do have a lot of, unbroken pieces which could be used for something, even if it's just making a MOC for my own pleasure. But also a huge part of my collection, like I think I mentioned in the first episode of this series, was that I want to collect not just, one wave set, but, actually display a wave of enemies. And by these wave sets, I'm referring to the Vizorak, the Vaki, the Borak, and maybe some of the Rahi, maybe some of the Bionicle stars like the Rakshi or Nektan, the Paraka. So I want to capture that, and having these extra pieces could be really useful, in actually assembling maybe a set I had and now I just need to get one last for the wave. Or for the combiners, which are obviously combining some of the sets. If I have the assembled set, it's a lot easier than sifting through a bunch of pieces to disassemble this and put it back together to make that combiner, since I don't need instructions or a box for that. But I'm kind of detracted from the point here where that, building these sets or at least having some sort of organization would be really useful. So my preferred form would be, to get all of these built and have very, very little extra pieces. But as I've dumped these bins out on the floor, it just gets very overwhelming, just like when I was a child, because there's pieces all over, and maybe it takes 10 minutes to find a piece, and maybe I'm looking for 20 minutes for a piece I actually don't have anymore. And so I brainstormed a few ways to help make rebuilding the sets easier, and one of them is just not organizing it by parts, since that can get kind of crazy since there's a lot of different parts, but maybe at least organizing it by color. So if I'm looking for a part, I can go to a much smaller sample size and find that part. And that should make rebuilding the sets easier, and then I can tap into those sets if, first off, I just need that set for my collection and then I only need the box or instructions, or like I said, if I'm building the combiners or fleshing out my waves and all that stuff. So the purpose of this is I'm going to show you the idea that I came up with to help organize these parts. I found these storage drawers in my attic that I was saving for something useful, and I'm glad that I got them now, because I think this is perfect for keeping or at least separating the Bionicle parts by color. So the goal here is to use these 3 drawers. Now you may be thinking, well, only 3 separators is basically nothing for the many different colors of Bionicle parts. But I got this giant sheet of cardboard here. I'm just going to take up the entire camera. But I'm going to cut some dividers, or at least make some dividers out of this sheet of cardboard. The only concern I really have is that the cardboard may not sit square or tight against the bottom of the drawer. So if there is a container that has a lot of small pieces in it, they may roll under or slide under the divider. But if that happens, maybe I'll tape them down to the bottom as well. Like I said, I'm going to play it by ear. But for now, at the bare minimum, this should really help with organization. So I guess I'll skip ahead to looking at some of the cardboard pieces I cut. So here is one of the cardboard dividers done. I actually made a couple changes to my design. At first, like I said, I was going to have 2 cardboard sheets, and then I would cut a slit into 2 of the thirds surrounding the middle third of one of the sheets, and then slide in the cardboard piece. But I think that was going to cause an issue, like I said, where the bottom of the cardboard wouldn't be completely flush with the bottom, so little pieces can possibly slide under. So I decided instead to cut 2 of the 4 pieces into thirds fully and not just slitting them down. And then I used hot glue, and it's staying pretty well together so far. And then just looking where I marked the left side there, it stays in pretty nicely. So I got one done. I think now I'm going to start organizing the colors a bit, so I'll show you guys that. So I emptied out the smaller bin, and I'm not sure if I said this before, but this is the bin of pieces that I set aside after going through the bigger bin, because I assumed looking for them again in the bigger pile would take some time. So emptied that one out, and just to show you what I started organizing so far, again, just starting it off by color, even though if we zoom in over there, I am putting the Technic like pins and kind of axles in a separate pile and mixing colors there, just since they're kind of small, and it'll just make it easier, I think, in keeping those together, because, for example, right next to it you have the black pieces for right now. If I mix some of the black axles that are really small with some of the larger armor pieces, it can just get hard to find them, so I think keeping the axles separate would make more sense. Also, I have like a translucent pile. Right now there's only 1 translucent piece in it, right over there, but I assume I'll be getting more. I still haven't decided what I'm doing about 2 slightly different colored pieces. So as you can see, I have a dark blue foot here and a light blue thigh piece. I think I'm just going to have to gauge and see if I have too few of one colored piece and it's very similar to like a dark blue, for example, then I can combine them into one category. I have masks separate for right now. They're up there. Get that in focus. So color doesn't matter for them, since, you know, the masks are generally many different colors, and I think keeping all of them together is useful. As far as weapons, for right now, I'm still categorizing them by color. So I have silver weapons and just leg pieces and thigh pieces and all that over there for right now. But if there's too many silver weapons, since there are many, maybe I'll just separate weapons as something else and keep the silver pieces in their own section. I do have to make, I guess, a creative decision in determining what color these other weapons are and shields over there. So the Gresh blade would be a dark green, I'd say. Vakama's fire blade would be a dark red, and Metis's shield, I'd say, is a light blue, which actually, that could be moved with the light blue thigh piece over there. So already consolidating pieces, these 2 should be together. And then, oh yeah, also, as far as this goes over here, not sure what I'm doing with Paraka spines yet. I have a couple. I'll break apart the inner pieces and categorize them. The translucent eyes will go with the translucent pieces, but not sure what I'm doing with them for right now. I'll probably just put them to the side. So I'm going to finish organizing all these pieces, and if I see anything interesting, I'll stop and definitely record it. Otherwise, you'll see me when this is fully organized by color. So after a few hours of sorting everything, I finally finished. Took a bit longer than I thought, but it turned out really well. I'm really happy with it. It looks awesome from a top-down perspective, as you can see. All the piles look really cool. I think I'm just gonna get right into it and tell you some of the changes I made to my strategy, I guess, and just go over all the piles, I guess. So first off, just moving up a little bit. As you can see, I decided to combine the different shades of one color, so all the blues are together. So that includes the light blues, dark blues, and the slate variation, like with Metis's shield. That also goes for the greens in the corner, up there. You can see my shadow pointing, and then the reds all the way over there. In fact, I'll just show that. It's probably easier. Yeah, so the reds there, and then the greens, and I think that's it. Oh, and then the gold here also contains brown a little bit, which is still awesome. And then there's a pile here of just miscellaneous, quote, garbage. It's my garbage pile, even though it's just various other Lego pieces, some Hero Factory stuff in there, system stuff. There's a Ziploc bag. So that's just, stuff that's not being part of the Bionicle collection. Then I also decided what to do with the Paraka spines over here. So this is my official miscellaneous pile for Bionicle stuff. So this pile contains collectibles and some weapon ammo. And there's a bit of a crossover, so I have the Rotuka and Kanoka, which are also not only collectibles, but also weapon ammo, Krana, collectibles. This is more of a miscellaneous item. It is part of the Mystica's gun, I think the Ghost Blaster, the ammo there, the Kordak Blaster ammo, some Zammer Spheres, rubber band for the Lavok call, I believe. So just some miscellaneous stuff, slash collectibles, slash ammo, and other miscellaneous stuff there. That's the translucent pile over here. Translucent pile over there. The Vaki headpiece part, I included in there, even though they're pretty opaque, but they're kind of translucent a bit, so I just threw them in there. And then one of the biggest changes that I did have to think about for a little bit that I made was I still have that Technic pin slash axle pile, but I actually slightly modified it. Originally, I was putting all the pin pieces in there, and axles, including the light gray ones and the dark gray ones. But I decided to actually move those out because, as many of you know, in 2004, LEGO decided to change from light gray slash dark gray to light bluish gray slash dark bluish gray. So I separated those since they're going to wind up being separated anyway, and that's really important when building sets from a certain year to know which color gray they used. So the gray should be separate in general, and they're going to have to be separated even further to distinguish between the two different kinds. Now I can see it from here. I'm not sure if the camera will pick this up, but these are two different ones. In fact, actually the camera picks it up better than the human eye. I'm not sure how focused that is. Let me see if I can get that into focus for you guys. There you go. So that is the dark gray, this is the dark bluish gray. A lot harder to tell in poor lighting conditions and with the human eye. But I need to further separate those. I'm going to wait to do that though until I do the larger bin. And then same thing for the light gray, and this is the hardest to tell actually. But I think I can see two that kind of fall in. So that's the light bluish gray, that is the light gray. So slightly different. I'm going to wait to do those since that's going to take a lot of concentration. I'll just do them all at once. So I changed that, and then also at first I was going to put in the, and this is going back to the Technic pin and axle pile. I was going to have another Technic pile for just various Technic pieces, like let's just say this. But I decided that it was getting too complex. There were many different colors in there, and there were some pieces that were still in a color pile and some Technic pieces that weren't, and so it was kind of getting a little strange, and I just decided to stick to the original plan for this organization, and that was to just put everything in color with the exception of some of the miscellaneous pieces, the translucent stuff, and just the Technic pins and axles. Since those are used so often, I feel like those should be separate. And there's the little rule in there with the grays, so it was already complex. I didn't want to make it any more complex, so I just stuck with the main coloration difference between the piles. Alright, so before I got into sorting through the blue storage bin, I actually want to show you guys some modifications I was making to the cardboard dividers that sit inside the blue storage drawers. So the issue I was running into was that as I closed the drawer with the cardboard divider inside of it, there was a piece of cardboard that was getting stuck on the top of the storage container. And that was actually because the sheet I cut the cardboard from wasn't square on one side.
So this was a really easy fix. All I did was simply cut the top of it. It's still not perfectly square, but it's below the threshold that it should be, so that it doesn't get caught. So just showing you guys how it fits now. That's how it fits, which is pretty nice. And it wasn't too big of a deal. The biggest thing was I don't want the cardboard to get stuck on the drawer as I'm closing it and possibly rip off. Since hot glue isn't the strongest bonding substance out there, I don't want it to rip off because then the pieces would combine, and that would probably be kind of a pain. So what I'm doing now is, since that's technically done, I will finish building the other two for the other two drawers here. So I have all the pieces cut already, and gluing should be pretty quickly. But I also found out a way to resolve a second issue, which was making sure that pieces don't roll under the sections. So since the bottom of this is pretty flush, like it does sit nicely on a solid surface, the drawer is actually kind of warped. So I'm not sure if you could see it, possibly like that. It's a little hard to see, and I only have one hand to work with here. But there's some curvature on the bottom of the drawer, and that's probably because there was stuff in here previously, and it just, as it weighs it down, it starts to warp the drawer a little bit. So the issue is that when something like this sits inside of it, there's a little bit of space, just enough space for something like Technic pins or Technic axles to actually roll under and mix. And that kind of ruins the point, because now I'm going to be opening the drawer really quickly and pieces will be sliding back, and it's just going to mix everything up, and it kind of ruins the point of having something like this dividing the pieces. So the first idea I had was actually using packaging tape to possibly, tape down this cardboard divider to the bottom of the drawer, and maybe pieces wouldn't slide or would kind of be bonded to it a little bit or something. It really wasn't a great idea, and that would require a lot of tape and just precision cutting, and it just seems like it would be a waste of time. But then I thought, if I took just standard sheets of paper, as I knock this stuff over, if I took standard 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper and laid out maybe 4 pieces of it here, just like this, and this is really rough. I'll make it slightly more precise when I'm actually doing it. But the point being, if I laid these down and put this on top of that, the cardboard divider on top of the paper, and glued it down, the paper would be stuck, so now there's no space to get underneath the cardboard divider before hitting the bottom. So it's going to prevent pieces from rolling under, and the paper should be, thick enough so that it won't rip if I drop pieces in. And if I'm grabbing it, since there is a little bit of space between the paper and the bottom of the drawer, I just have to be slightly careful not to poke a hole, otherwise pieces will fall through. And again, not all sections of this are going to have those really small Technic pieces, but still, it's still important to be careful. So I'm going to do this. I'll show you how it looks after doing this initially and place it in the drawer. And then I'll show some progress as well on finishing this, and then eventually we'll get back to sorting the blue bin. And done. This is the completed cardboard divider with the paper bottom, and as you can see, I'll try to slide it in carefully just so I don't rip anything. It fits in very nicely, and now pieces won't be rolling between the sections because there's a nice paper bottom to it. So the only thing to be of concern is the sides here, but I think that'll be fine, and if it's not, I can always come up with something later on, but for now this is a great start. I wanted to explain how I'm actually building this cardboard divider. So what I did was, and you may have noticed this, I have pieces labeled here with numbers, and just to explain what all that means, in total I have 6 x-axis pieces. I'll be explaining this like it's a grid, so you have your x and your y-axis. So in total 6 pieces, each labeled 1 through 3 twice, and that's for both X lines I'll be making, and then 2 Y axis pieces, and they're both labeled 1. This also helps let me know what the bottom is, since I want the bottom to be flush with a solid surface. So what I do first is I take the first X-axis piece from the first pile and just stand it up, and then I take one of the Y-axis pieces and I glue it so I have a sort of part of a T without the right side, and then I take the second X-axis piece, glue it in there, then I take the second Y-axis piece and slide it in there. But instead of going on to the third X-axis piece, as you can see here, I'm actually going to put in the second X-axis piece for the second line. And this is so this cardboard divider I have here is going to be square. Otherwise, if I finish one row and then do the second, it's going to be already dry, the hot glue, since it dries fairly quickly, and I'll possibly be ripping the cardboard to make it square, or it just won't be square. So this ensures that it's going to be square, and as you can see, it is dried right now, and it's pretty square and it's looking pretty good. And now I can just finish off with the third x-axis and the first and third for the second one. And here are the cardboard dividers installed in the drawers. They came out really good. Really happy with it. I did have to make a few more slight modifications to the height of the cardboard dividers, mostly with the Y piece, as I called it when I was building it before. And this one still, there's a little flap here that kind of interferes with this. This kind of dips down a little bit. Not sure if you can see that. But that's okay though. You know, it turned out really well. These bottom two are really smooth. Really happy with that. And I can place the pieces in here. If necessary, I can take it out, you know, grab them, take them out. And again, if necessary, I can probably cut out and remove one of these if I wanted to make a section bigger for, say, the silver parts, which are absolutely massive so far. Or the pile of parts there is massive. Here's the third one. So again, really happy with how it turned out. But now, since this is all organized and built, I can now properly put the pieces away. But I think before I put them away, I do want to see how big each pile is going to be, so I know how many dividers I need to take out, or if I need to modify them. I may even put cardboard inside of here and split this in half, so I can finally get the rest of this storage container open, the blue one here, and start sorting, and I can show you a bit of that. That is how far it's filled up. So I'd say about halfway, and a lot of that in there, as you can see, isn't entirely Bionicle. I see an Evo breakout chest piece over there from Hero Factory. That's from Knight's Kingdom. There's Zactan. Actually, that's the piece that comes on Zactan's container, or canister, I believe. Possibly, yeah, there's a Neo Shifter thing there. The NHL hockey things. See parts of Alex. So there's a lot of stuff that isn't Bionicle in there. So, like I was saying, I don't think it's as bad as I thought. But enough talking. I don't want this video to be too long since there's many parts to this cleaning process. But let's get dumping this, and then I'll tell you what I'm doing next. So it's gonna be loud. So that is the fun part of dumping everything. Again, not as big as I thought, since I have gone through it and taken out many system parts. It used to be really filled and used to be more complete sets, which of course take up more space. I've only taken out maybe 4 sets. I can't think of the exact number off the top of my head. So the actual Bionicle parts in there, yeah, also all those other parts that used to be in there. So it used to be much more filled, but there's still a lot of pieces to go through. Certainly more than that other small container I went through. Okay, and here is the blue bin all sorted out. And as you can see, it actually is not too much different in size from that first pile that I sorted, or the first storage bin that I sorted through. Kind of right over here is the separator between the two piles. And as you can see, in some areas, like the black pieces, it's certainly bigger than the first pile. And then in other areas, maybe like the orange pieces, maybe not orange is the best, some of those Keto orange pieces over there, certainly smaller here, and the silver probably is smaller as well. So honestly, a little surprised by that, but that was partially because the garbage pile, as I was calling it, or the discard pile, was certainly a lot bigger. I filled up that entire mini storage bin with the pieces. I do have the canisters over there, but they bear no I guess, relationship with being discarded. Actually, I probably will keep both of those canisters in my collection as well. So that's part of the reason why that this one wasn't as big as I thought, since a lot of the pieces in there were System and Hero Factory and all that other stuff. But another reason is, actually, I got the exact count, I checked, of all the sets that I did have in here, but I actually built myself already, just from me going through and trying to build them and put them near my collection in case I would need them for the reasons I mentioned earlier in the video. And it was about 14 sets, and they were Tahu Nuva, Panrak, that's the brown Rakshi, Kalma, Ackar, Defalak, Wanua, Hordika, Lewa Fantoka, Kopaka, Fantoka, Pohatu Fantoka, Tanma, Solak, Photok, Ackar, and Kina. So all of those were at one point in this bin, but I built them on my own, and it took quite a long time, as I said, so that's why I started sorting stuff, first getting out important pieces, and then leaving the others, and that still wasn't the best, so this is the new strategy now. I'm really happy with how it turned out. There still are a few things I have to do. I'm not done with it yet. First off, the obvious thing to do is combine just the piles into one. There's 2 piles here. And then from there, I will probably put in every piece in my storage container, which is sitting over there. I'll probably do that according to those sections as they built. Besides the darker gray and light gray. And that's because there's a slight color difference, as I said, from 2004 and on, and obviously before 2004. And I do want to separate those, so those 2 colors will actually wind up having 4 piles, since in reality there's 4 colors in there. So as I'm putting pieces in this first storage drawer, it was going really well. It stored a lot of the pieces way better than I thought it would. All of the white pieces fit into this one section. That's really good. That's a lot of space, and that bodes well for some of the bigger sections over here. Even the Paraka spines fit in over here. All the masks fit in, and there's a ton of extra space, as you can see. And every drawer but one, or every section but one, is filled. But there is a slight issue that I did kind of think of before, but I thought maybe in practice it would work a little better, and that's getting the pieces out of here. If there's a piece I need at the bottom here, granted, I'm not sure if I'd need it, but it'd be way more convenient to pull out this section, dump out the pieces on the floor, and then I can sort through them and then easily just scoop them all back in the container and slide it back in. As it is right now, it's just a little awkward getting the pieces out, and pieces can spill into other sections, and then I have to sort through there, and it just makes it less convenient. And having that removable and replaceable container aspect is just really convenient, with dumping out pieces, putting them back in, and sorting through them. And this takes quite a bit of time to get all these pieces out. I can only reach in and get so many. I don't want to rip the paper at the bottom. So there's a lot of issues that I just thought of because of that. So I do think it may be for the best to take out these sections, starting with one of the other drawers, actually this one, and maybe getting rid of the paper at the bottom, and just start by cutting out some of these sections and rebuilding them into full-on 4-walled units. And that may take a lot of time, probably just as much as it took to make all of these, but I think in the end it's just going to turn out way better. And even when I'm done using these, now I have all these little containers to store stuff in that fits in these drawers. So I think that's going to be a worthy investment, and unfortunately that means I'm going to have to put all of this storing on pause and go back to constructing stuff. So maybe I'll walk you through a couple steps of that. Alright, after spending 2 hours fixing the cardboard dividers, here's what I came up with, and I am very happy with this. I now have containers for every section that are pretty easy to take in and take out. As you can see, really easy. Actually started with this row over here, and these are a bit tighter, but as it went on I got better. And I'm really interested in seeing how now I can apply this to the other storage containers or the other drawers, and see how I continue to improve my construction ability with them. And I think later on at the end of this video or this episode, I'll definitely have more to say about, I guess, how this connects to the whole mentality of collecting and kind of going back and making changes. I think it's very important, but again, I'll speak more on that at the end of the video. But this took about 2 hours to do. Granted, I had like the skeleton done for it mostly, had to cut apart the sections, take off the paper in the bottom, but still really happy how this turned out. It's going to be so easy to take a container out, dump parts, sort through them. A lot easier. It took time, but as was told to me throughout my entire life, anything that's worthwhile is going to take time. So nice little lesson there. So what I'm going to do now is move the parts from this container into here. This will take a little bit of time since, like I said, part of the issue is having to take out little pieces at a time, and I don't want them to mix. But I do think, of course, once they're transferred here, it's going to look awesome. And here are all the pieces moved from the old cardboard dividers to the new cardboard divider containers. That's getting to be quite the mouthful, but really happy with how it turned out. I'm already seeing the use of this new style. I believe the Kitarange/yellow container and just the normal orange container, I had them swapped at first, so I wanted to change it, have the one with more pieces go in the bigger container. So it was pretty easy, just took it out, dumped it, took the other one out, dumped it, swapped them, put it back in. That probably would have taken like 5 times as long if I had it in the old style. So again, really happy that I built it the first way and was able to see the flaws in it and able to make the necessary modifications to have something that's a lot stronger now and better and that can be expanded into scalable beyond Bionicle parts. Now, like, once I'm done building all these sets, I can use it for maybe more parts I get in the future, maybe my Lego system parts and a lot of other stuff. So really happy with this. You know, again, took 2 hours to do, which is quite an investment of time and very tedious. You know, kneeling down, cutting cardboard, and you know, all that strain on your body, I guess. But again, just really happy with how it turned out. Definitely going to put in the 4 more hours to finish the other 2 drawers. I guess just something to note though, with this we did lose some space, so if you note the space difference between the bottom left corners in both styles, you can see that definitely lost some space, so the white parts spilled over into another smaller container. That's fine, but I suspect though that I may not have enough room for the rest of these, specifically the black and silver, because those are the biggest piles. So I may use that strategy I was telling you guys about earlier, I believe, where I may split this into 2, I guess, containers now, and put black on one side and silver on the other side. But I'll see how that goes. I'll do those last. Also, the gray parts, the dark gray and the light gray over here, will get split, like I said, into 2 categories each because of the color change in 2004. And again, many hours later, I finished the cardboard containers. So there's number 2. There's number 3, and I'm really happy with the new style as opposed to the standard dividers that I started with, as these are really going to work out well, as we saw with the first drawer filled with parts now. And as you can probably tell as well, I really improved in my construction and my technique as I went from 2 to 3. The first one was a little uneven in that first left column over here. Things weren't exactly lined up, as you can probably see from here. Some boxes were a little bit fit a little too nicely in there, and there was a squeeze fit. But as I moved along, there was more space between them, granted not too much, since I do want to store Bionicle parts in them, and I don't want to take up too much empty space, but it's a lot easier to take them out and do all that fun stuff. So again, really happy with how it turned out. It's going to be so convenient, as I explained in previous parts, but I just wanted to show you guys how they turned out. Even got a little war mark there with hot glue dripping on the finger, but no worries there. Probably looks worse than how it actually felt. But yeah, really happy with how it turned out. Again, really improved, and it took much quicker as time went on, as I was recognizing patterns and all that fun stuff. Alright, and once again I am done organizing all of the pieces and putting them into the cardboard containers inside the storage drawers. So here is drawer number 2, all filled up, and as you can see, the blues are in 2 cardboard containers, the greens in 2, reds in 2, actually reds in 3, which I'm just realizing again now. And as you can see, I did decide on putting the Paraca spines in their own cardboard container. So that's drawer 2. Now drawer 3 only has the dark and light gray pieces, and as you can see as well, I did separate the dark gray and dark bluish gray and light bluish gray. So there's the dark bluish gray in those 2, dark gray in these 2, and then light bluish gray and light gray. And there are 3 empty cardboard containers. I may use those for something else at some point. Not sure if I'll further separate a drawer, if maybe as I'm building some of the figures and I realize that, oh, you know, it'd be more convenient if these pieces were kept separate. Maybe I'll use them for that. And the whole reason for there being 3 empty containers is that I did decide on turning this into its own little storage container. So I quickly built 2 more longer and bigger containers only for the black and silver pieces, since there were so many. And just like the normal storage containers, it's fairly easy to pull this out. Long, but fairly thin, I guess, but stores all the pieces well. The silver almost overflowing, so I do think there were slightly more silver than black, but pretty cool. This one, actually, I do need to slightly re-glue that top over there. It seems like maybe the glue didn't stick good enough, but that's okay. So really happy with how that turned out. And as I build more figures, these piles will shrink, so at some point these may be in here, but it is nice to still have these built just in case, again, just like with all these, I can use them for something else. So, and that pretty much concludes this whole process of me organizing the pieces, building the containers, modifying the containers, sorting the pieces into the containers, and then kind of have having a final overview of everything. So really happy again with how it all turned out. Can't wait to start building, but besides that, I do have a few closing remarks, so I guess we can get into that, and I'll talk more about where we're going to go next for the collection.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and before I close off anything officially in this episode, I just want to speak on that lesson I kind of learned that I said in the episode I would talk more about and in the intro. And what that lesson is referring to, I'm not sure if I hyped it up as anything bad, but it's not. I think it's a great lesson to be learned, and that's relating to the actual cardboard dividers that I first made that sat on the paper, and I wasn't too happy with them, so I moved on to the cardboard containers. And so the issue with those was that with the original dividers, they were great and they separated the pieces, but if I wanted to get pieces out, I had to use my hand, and that honestly did take a lot of time since the containers are fairly small, and then putting them back in was annoying too because some pieces would drop out, like the small Technic pins, and that just wasn't really what I wanted, you know. It was saving me maybe a little bit of time, but still it was going to be a very annoying process. So now those containers are way more convenient. I could pull out a container, dump the pieces, and just scoop them right back in. So it's a lot more convenient, and it truly is saving me time, as that was my original goal for this, to create these containers and organize the pieces by color to save me time from sifting through an entire pile looking for pieces. And if pieces are dripping into other containers, it's going to cost more time. And not that I'm the busiest person in the world, but you know, it becomes less fun when it starts taking a lot of time, and this whole collection is for my own enjoyment. And so the lesson here is kind of about a failure, but also about experimentation. You know, collecting or customizing certain things require a lot of experimentation and failure. And there's going to be times when you're making something and you think it's going to work great, and it turns out to be a complete failure. And that's completely okay, because now you're going to know for the future how to avoid that issue when you're making something similar, or maybe something completely different. You just know the right mindset to approach with it. And you know, there's countless times in collections where maybe it's you invested too much in one thing and it didn't turn out, or you got a bad deal on a product when you find it better. You're constantly learning, and maybe there's a secret hidden life lesson in here as well as just being patient and learning from your failures. But I do think it really applies to collecting, and you saw it firsthand here where, you know, the first design was kind of a failure, but it gave me more insight into how to adapt my second design. And I think that's so important in collecting, and it shouldn't discourage you, because it's just going to make your collection a lot stronger and a lot smoother, and ultimately it's going to make you happy. And the second mini lesson is really that it is your own collection. You make the rules, so there's no set guidelines you have to follow. Of course, as you saw in the first episode, kind of in my spreadsheet, I have rules for what I collect. But still, it's my rules. I set them. You know, there's no set way to do things. So if you're happy with like just those dividers, then that's great for you. Maybe that's really convenient for you, but for me it wasn't. So those, I think, are two really important lessons where, for one thing, you know, learn from your failures. You're going to be failing a lot, or things won't turn out great for your collection or how you want to buy things or organize it, but that's going to help you in the future, and ultimately it's going to be the first necessary step to getting to that point where you are really happy. And second, it's your collection. You know, make your own rules. You don't have to follow certain rules, and you make your collection how you want it. So again, thank you guys for watching. Really enjoyed making this. Hopefully this was a cool episode, and you kind of see how episodes will be like. Again, it was filmed in the past, but the next episode, I believe, is going to be me sorting through those sets that you saw in the first episode that I would like to finally build an inventory so I can update my spreadsheet. And then from there, I'll move on to maybe building some old sets from when I was a kid, updating my spreadsheets. So really excited to release more episodes. Definitely subscribe and like, comment. I love talking with you guys. And honestly, most importantly, join my Discord server. It's an awesome collaborative community called Infinity Collaborations, where not only do you collaborate on projects, but there also is some sort of official collaboration you can do with me and a few others. And I think that's a really cool opportunity. And in there, you know, we talk about many things from, you know, sci-fi, Bionicle, Lego, Transformers, gaming, all this stuff, all multimedia, shows, all that fun stuff. So you can, you know, talk about all these cool multimedia items and also be creative in our server. So definitely check it out and join it. But with that, I will talk to you guys later.